Thank you, Mr Hollowbone, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I also congratulate my honourable friend for securing this debate. When we talk, or when the government talks about childcare provision, it's usually presented in the context of enabling parents to go to work, and then secondarily as a development tool in getting children ready for school. What we say less about is the critical impact the early years education system has on reducing inequality. And this point was made very powerfully by Dr. Laura Janner when she presented to the APPG a week or so ago. And she found that it was the primary determinant of how a person what a person's life outcomes were as an adult, linked to whether or not they completed school, whether they formed a loving relationship, whether they held down and secured employment, and whether they avoided the criminal justice system. And all the childcare providers in my constituency would agree with that and would say that to deliver that, they need to have high quality, qualified staff. And what's been striking to me in my nearly 1 year as an MP is how difficult they have found to deliver that. And I've done some quite granular work, which time won't allow me to elaborate on. But in essence, when you take the amount of money that they're allocated through the free hours programme, and then you take the top-up that they receive from West Berkshire Council, even then, they struggle to meet an appropriate wage rate for qualified staff, taking into account national minimum wage obligations, a desire to provide good resources, inflationary pressures. And the point was illustrated by one nursery when they said a qualified member of staff retired and they could only afford to replace that with a 0 hours contract. And the other thing that has been a huge driver on their finances, and the reason why they entered the COVID crisis in such a serious position of deficit, was the lack of certainty, not knowing term by term what funds would be available. And I regret to say that I speak today on behalf of nurseries like Ladybird in Newbury, who are a PVI nursery that is literally on the brink. And if it closes the doors, and I sincerely hope that it won't, it will follow another 3 that have deregistered in the last 6 months. And what they're telling me in the PVI setting is that they've been hit very hard by the COVID crisis, particularly by parents withdrawing children in an unexpected way, and what was a projected profit for the year has turned into a loss of somewhere around £12,000. But also Hungerford Nursery, Victoria Park Nursery, 2 maintained nurseries, have reported a decline in income of £35,000 and £57,000 respectively, and taken together with the extra cost of making their premises COVID secure, the implications are very serious for their future. So what are the solutions? Every MP always requests more money, and I have to say I'm so grateful to the Minister for the work that I know she's done with the Treasury in getting more money in the spending review. But when I looked into the funding system, the tax-free entitlement, the 15 free hours, the 30 free hours, the tax credits, the universal credits, I think it's fair to say that different thresholds and different entitlements have added up to a system that is fragmented, piecemeal in the way that it's funded. And I do think some form of streamlining would be the best way of getting the money to the staff. And I just want to make one other point, which I do in my capacity as chair of the Women in Work APPG. What we're on the brink of is a bloodbath in terms of female employment. We know what's happening in hospitality. We know what's happening in retail. We know that those jobs are predominantly occupied by women. If childcare providers go out of business, there's going to be such an incentive to remain at the home looking after the kids, not finding new work. The Chancellor's guiding principle has been to avoid long-term structural unemployment, but without a childcare solution, I think we risk that.